If you are someone who struggles with the consistency side of showing up for your podcast, and you'd like to be able to create something that you can then repurpose and reuse in a bunch of different ways without having to come up with new content every single week, then this episode is definitely going to be for you. Our guest today shares how she was able to take a podcast that was 5 minutes or less and turn it into tons of content for about 2 years before she started adding in new content. Please join me in welcoming Menekse to the show. Hello, Menekse. I'm so excited that you are here today and that you're going to share your podcasting journey with us. But before we get started, if you could start by telling everyone who you are, what you do, and about your podcast.
Yeah, so my name is Menekse and I typically introduce myself as a professional nerd, but my background is in search engine optimization and I now work in AI. So I've got an app that helps people grow their businesses and save 40 hours a month. And that has been just a super enjoyable journey going from sort of SEO into that. I work a lot with smaller and creative businesses and people who don't necessarily have a team or they are, working on something with a couple of VAs max, but they're not necessarily running, scalable businesses. And so I started my podcast, well, it's probably 3 years now, as a sort of pep talk. So the idea is that it's a 3-minute marketing pep talk that people can listen to at the start of their day. It really breaks down some of the sort of jargon, especially with organic traffic and search engine optimization. It was just designed to really break down some of the more overwhelming elements of marketing into sort of digestible episodes. And I have got around 55 or so episodes currently. I recorded around 40 of them in 2021. And then I had a really stressful house move. My husband works for the Church of England and we just had like a really challenging move to East London. And I took a break. And then at the end of that year, I was just noticing a lot of burnout among a lot of the people in my business space. And I recorded a sort of micro series of 6 episodes that were just kind of pep talks for people who are feeling discouraged or frustrated with their businesses. And then I have, at the end of 2023, released 15 episodes exploring the future of the internet and AI. Again, just helping people kind of understand what the landscape of it looks like. So that's a little bit about me and how my podcast ties into it. But we'll get into the sort of consistency side and sort of the benefits of it, I'm guessing, as we continue our conversation.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So when you started your podcast, I mean, you're looking at like post 2020 when like everybody wanted to launch a podcast, right? But you had your podcast. And I do love that miniseries. When I was looking through your stuff, I was like, oh yes, this is so good. Like having content in there, I think, especially as business owners, the content that we get fed tends to be very linear to what the person's expertise is. And we don't always bring in the humanity of it, which with the rise of AI is also really important that we are bringing in that humanity and we're drawing people in, not just for what we do, but also for the storytelling piece and the real life humanness of it. I mean, before we were talking about being a parent and what that's like and getting sick. And it's just, that creates a connection between you and I and also the listeners. If they're parents, like, oh yeah, totally get that. And instead of just saying, okay, we're just going to talk about business, because we're humans too. And I think that that's so important that you had that mini series in there. So back in 2021, you had stopped podcasting. Was it due to your own burnout or your own kind of like feeling like, I don't really know that I want to keep doing this? You were doing it on a daily basis, like a weekday basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a really, really big consistency. So what did that kind of process look like for you to decide, I don't know that I want to keep doing this right now?
Yeah, so I think I've always done it as a project in my business that has been a sort of enjoyable piece. So at the point that it stopped feeling like something that was, I don't mean easy in a bad way, but like an enjoyable thing, it was something that I was able to put on pause because I knew that there was like a backlog of content that people could listen to. And I started a podcast knowing the benefits of them for organic and like long-term content. In the same way as people create YouTube videos and blog articles, podcasting is long-term content. So even though I haven't had that consistency since starting the very first episode, it is something that I can go back to. And my approach to it has been that I'll pull out some of the sort of related episodes into landing pages on my website that mean that people can listen to things that are related. And then I can direct, people from my mailing list to listen to things, even if they're not necessarily published in order or they're not necessarily the most recent episode. So I think that if we frame our podcasts as the delivery of content that we might otherwise be sending via email or putting in an article, it helps us to really consider how much more of an asset it is to our business. And despite, only having 55 episodes, I have had over 20,000 downloads of my podcast, and that is consistent in terms of, week to week. I'm still getting daily downloads of episodes and people who are listening to it and finding it for the first time. So as far as the sort of urgency behind picking it back up and continuing to record episodes, it is actually something that I'm working on at the moment. And I've hired someone to help me repurpose my workshops and other types of content into the sort of structure that I use for episodes. But the benefit of it for me is that I don't need to be consistent with it. I want to be consistent with it, but it can still continue to be an asset for my business, even if it is not something that I have the time or capacity for during a particular moment. But the reason that I actually stopped recording episodes was because we had moved house, and we've moved to a place where we had to do a whole lot of DIY when we moved in. There wasn't an easy place to record. There is a lot of background noise and like building work that happens outside our house because London, there's always new buildings going up and everything. So it just took a little bit of time to really get into a routine. And then I have had a pivot personally in terms of my career as a marketer because of how the internet is changing, because of artificial intelligence, because of how search algorithms are changing. I have, historically worked in SEO and been a freelance head of marketing for people who've got a body of content. And just the way that we engage with our audience is changing so significantly with the rise in AI and how different tech companies are responding to that. And so for me to transition into publicly focusing a lot more on the marketing strategy and the AI side of things, which had been projects that I'd worked on behind the scenes previously, but I had not necessarily led with it for my audience. I really needed to figure out, okay, what does this transition look like? Because if I was in like corporate career, I would have changed jobs so many times since I started working as a marketer, and nobody questions it if you have a title change and you kind of move into a new company or whatever. But there is just something about, as you grow as a business owner, as you grow as a podcaster, as you grow as somebody on the internet who works professionally, the way that people perceive you is one thing, and actually the marketing of that transition is a really big piece. And so I just really, needed to do a little bit of work on how I felt comfortable to show up with the transition and how I wanted to kind of communicate that. And, you get this sense of like, will people think I'm flaky if I've like changed and I look like I'm doing something totally different? So there's all of those things I think we kind of all balance once we've been in business a certain length of time as well.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. I remember when I've been in the online space for about 9 years now. And so going from, all right, doing general marketing, blog writing, a little bit of podcasting to then saying, I think I want to do a little bit of inventory analysis and inventory management for small e-commerce businesses. And then being like, well, that's terrible. I hate that, even though I do it for my day job. Don't like that. I really like podcasting. And then jumping headfirst into podcasting and doing that full time for people and like offering all of the things for people. I definitely agree. It can feel like I've been known for this thing, or I've been known for a few different things. Will people think that this is just another thing? Specifically my husband, right? Because he's been here for all of those transitions and he's like, what are you doing now? This one stuck and I love it. And it's really been enjoyable and it's been able to sustain us as a family, which is really great. But yeah, that kind of fear of, all right, am I going to just change my mind again in 6 months, or are things going to shift? Is the market going to shift? Can be really overwhelming for us as business owners. I really want to go back to what you said though about having that bank of content that you could pull from. We talk about this with a limited series. So for people who don't want to have a full podcast or don't want to continue podcasting because they maybe don't have the capacity to do so, having some type of 12 to 25, 24 episode limited series, especially for business owners, is a great way to touch on those cornerstone topics or those topics that you're talking about constantly and sharing about. And then if you have 12 episodes, literally just repurposing them every week and cycling through them is the word I'm looking for, that you can talk about in a way that really makes sense. And you're still showing up as an expert. You really maximize that content. People are still going to find it. It's still on the internet, but you can use it, like you said, on those landing pages to give people a taste of what it is that you do. You can use it in your email sequences to encourage people to get to know you a little quicker, which voice is going to do that a lot better than just an email. So love those strategies so much. And I think that it's so important for us that yes, people talk about, oh, consistently show up, but you get to decide what that consistency looks like for you. And if you're making the most of the content that you already have, then what's the harm? Like you're not hurting anybody. And this isn't rocket science. If one thing's off, the whole thing falls apart. That's not how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Do what works for you.
Yeah.
So I love that you were able to do that. When you kind of went on that hiatus and you were repurposing that past content, did you do anything to like tweak it or make it better? Because I know SEO is constantly changing and things are shifting. So how did that kind of off time look for you?
Yeah, so with how short form the episodes are, I would collate them into, 2 or 3 episodes, would make a blog post because I think they work out about 400 or 500 words, but you really want your articles to be kind of a better quality than that. So the way that I think about it is that 5 episodes, which is if someone's listening each day, a week of episodes, make one really good quality blog post that I can then embed the audio into. But then the individual episodes themselves, like often I'll take that as a base and then I'll add some additional context to it or a resource or similar and use that as an email as part of my evergreen email nurture sequences. So the most recent sort of project has been with the AI episodes because of the fact that I built out Marketing Magic and so on. But I've actually really enjoyed taking old episodes and using Marketing Magic to pull out the key quotes from it. So the tool that I have built, it'll like pull out the most impactful or valuable sentences from the episode. And that makes really great like social content, or again, things that are really easy to put in emails and to repurpose elsewhere. So that has been sort of a helpful thing for me because I love creating content. But I think as business owners, we can really get locked into a cycle of creating free content constantly that feels incredibly overwhelming. It means that marketing feels really difficult. And my approach and the approach that I encourage for people in my community is that if you start from what you sell and reverse engineer your marketing message from that point, it helps you not to get overwhelmed. It means that you always have ideas for content that you can post and talk about. And you can actually focus on the creation and the things that you're wanting to be doing in your business that are client facing or customer facing or are more creative and in line with your strengths and gifts.
Yeah. If people are starting a new business, creating consistent content is not the way to go. Focus on selling, make some money. And then once you have some space and you have some experience behind how you've helped people and you know what those pain points really are, then you can speak to it. I have people come to me and they're like, I want to launch a podcast. I'm like, that's cool. See me in a year. I'm not going to take your money because right now is not a good time for you to launch a podcast because you're just starting in this side. And it's a long game, really. And so you have to really be strategic with it. So I'm always selling first and then you can create your content. Please, let's make some money.
Yeah, I think it's that piece around, because it's the same with like search engine optimization, right? It's the sort of longer term stuff. So when you're first starting out, that sense of cash flow and making sure that the activities and actions that you're taking each day are going to lead to a sale, ideally within the next 1 to 2 weeks. They're the things that you prioritize. The longer you're in business, the more you can invest in things that are going to bring leads into your brand, 6, 12 months, maybe 2 years down the line. But the idea of when you're first growing from a marketing strategy perspective, you're either looking at spending money on ads to get in front of your audience, or creating content to get in front of your audience. And what people take from that creating content is that they should be creating all of the content all of the time, instead of just understanding, okay, well, this is what I'm doing. Here are the questions that people have related to that. Let me talk about that in a few different places. So you get your marketing message down. What is it that you're solving? What is it that you're talking about? And then you just talk about that wherever you can on the internet. And that's how you can grow your business without this idea of like, okay, well, I need to be publishing 2 or 3 blog posts every single week. And I need to start a podcast. I need to start a YouTube channel. And I need to make sure that I'm present on LinkedIn and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and post in Facebook groups. And it's like all of those things would absolutely grow your platform in the sense that you're getting in front of people, but it ends up being marketing busy work that makes people feel like they're doing impactful marketing without it necessarily bringing the results. So you're taking off the checkbox of like, well, I'm doing digital marketing, but you're not necessarily looking at the fact that actually in order for your marketing to be effective, you do want to be able to measure the results that you're getting from it. And if you are taking a bit of a scattergun approach because you just want to be as present as possible online, you end up on a hamster wheel that's really difficult to get off, because the longer you're in business, the faster that hamster wheel goes. And it just ultimately leads to people crashing and burning often, and realizing actually that when we're thinking through our content, we're thinking about the customer's journey to our products. And so understanding what we're selling and then taking a bigger picture and making sure that the content that we're creating maps against that customer journey means that we have evergreen assets in our content when we do have the time to create it, but we're also being super cognizant of what it is that our customers need to hear, so that even if we're not creating long form content in the sense of like podcast episodes or blog posts all the time, that content exists, that content is searchable, that content is stuff that you can present to people, but you can be having those conversations with people and getting the ball rolling in terms of how you think about the way that you do things and the way that you answer questions, and keep it focused without getting really overwhelmed by all of the potential that there is on the internet for growing your audience on a variety of different platforms.
Yes. My degree's in marketing, so I'm just over here like nodding my head like, yep. Everything she's saying, guys, please listen, especially if you're newer in business, or if you're considering a podcast and you're maybe really struggling with getting in front of your ideal clients, not listeners, clients. That should really be your focus, especially if cash flow is low. And I love your strategy around 5 minutes or less. I have a sister podcast to this that is Successful Podcasting Unlocked. That's 10 minutes or less, because I cannot speak less than 10 minutes. And so it's 10 minutes or less answering podcasting questions. So every week a new episode goes out where like I said, 10 minutes or less. And that has been really great as a way for me to be able to take that one episode, and I use AI to repurpose it into a bunch of different content. So I now have LinkedIn blog articles. I've got blog articles on my website. I have several reels that I can pick and pull from, TikToks, shorts. It goes up on YouTube. There's all these different ways, and I'm batch recording them in one afternoon, 4 episodes. There we go. I did 8 last week. I'm never doing that again. That was a lot, but 4 is a great kind of setting. You can do it in about an hour and a half, and just having that ability to show up in one space and then either hire it out or work on it on a weekly basis to just get that information out, or using tools like Riverside and Gemini or ChatGPT or your marketing magic tool. Using these tools to be able to repurpose our content saves us so much time and effort. And would love to hear your thoughts on when it comes to creating this content. I've talked about this before, but I want to know your opinion. What is the best way to kind of go about that? So typically I would say you can use these tools to help you brainstorm, you speak, share those experiences, add in your own personality, add in your stories, take that transcript, and then have the tool repurpose it. Obviously, you have to read through it, because most of the time it'll say things and you're like, that's not what I meant. And that's not what I said. Or you didn't add in that story that was really great. So you got to add in those elements, get ideas for social posts. What are some things that maybe I'm not thinking about, or that is a way that you do it that might be different?
Yeah, no, I think that's like great in the sense of we know ultimately when we start a podcast, for instance, what it is that we want to achieve, which is connect with our ideal audience, add value, have interesting conversations and create interesting content. I think that if you've got an interview based podcast format, I do feel like it's almost a little bit easier when it comes to the actual content of the episodes, because you're basing it on the interesting guests that you're talking to. So you're able to, frame questions, etc., and make sure that you're curating the guests well, but you're not having to necessarily create a whole piece of long form content yourself. When you're doing solo episodes, I think that it can be easy to get really overwhelmed by what you could talk about or what you should talk about. And so for me, that it always comes back to like, what is it that my ideal customer is trying to do, and how can I demystify or debunk or simplify things that mean that for them, the emotional response they have to my podcast is one of like relief and lightness. And so when they're listening, they're like, oh, that is actually such a relief that I don't have to think about that, or that's really simplified that thing that was really challenging. And so I think that when we understand who our listeners are and what it is that they're trying to do, it creates parameters for us in the same way as having a guest on our podcast creates parameters where we can answer the questions that our listeners are asking instead of our guests or the people that we're interviewing. So it's almost like, what would your ideal audience and your ideal customers be asking you if they were interviewing you, and how can you answer that? And AI is great for those things. Again, I already mentioned like customer journey, but I love customer journey mapping. My years in SEO have meant that I've done a lot of keyword research, customer journey mapping, market research in terms of customer interviews and things. And I just think they're a really great way of understanding what the user journey looks like for your particular business, and making sure that as you are creating any kind of content, it does align with the types of things, the types of questions, the types of topics that are of interest to those people. And it means that regardless of how the internet changes, regardless of how search engine optimization changes and visibility on the internet, you are still creating content that's going to resonate with the people that you want to serve in your business, which ultimately means that it has longevity and you're not going to have to re-record it, down the line. So, and then in terms of the like creation piece and then the repurposing, for me, pulling out quotes, helping with, sometimes I'll record an episode of something, and then because I do a lot of online education as well, I might have, say, a series of 5 episodes that look at Google tools, and I will actually take the transcripts from those episodes and put them through Marketing Magic to get a sales page for a bigger workshop that looks at Google Analytics, for instance, and marketing metrics. So if I've got some content and I know that I want to create something else in my business, I can actually pull from that, because it's like, okay, what learning outcomes and key takeaways could a workshop that explored this topic include? What would it look like for us to have, a checkout page, a sales page, a product specification? What do ideal customers want to learn from something on this topic? And so that's one of my favorite tools in Marketing Magic, just because it helps me to frame any product updates that I do through the lens of, okay, well, I've talked about this already to a small degree. And then for people who want to take the next level, I can reverse engineer my thought processes into different formats like that in a way that make it really easy to give people the next step or the next level. So I think that the repurposing piece around how we reformat things is sort of a widely done thing within the podcasting space at the moment in particular. But the things that I've enjoyed have been really looking at how you can create actionable content from your podcast episodes as well as the marketing content. So Sell Your Workshop tools that within Marketing Magic cover that, but I've also got a repurposing tool that actually pulls out checklists, challenge ideas, cheat sheets that are sort of formatted in a way that allows you to create lead magnets or actionable things that help your audience implement what you've been talking about. And that's another piece that I personally really enjoy because of the type of brand that I have. Like, a big focus for me is implementation and helping people take action without feeling overwhelmed. And so being able to take a series, and again, I say like a series because for me, 5 episodes is still only like 2,000 words. But for me to take like 5 episodes that are around a similar topic and put them through that tool, I can get a really great cheat sheet and a sort of checklist to help people with getting quick wins within those particular marketing strategies that we've talked about, or those areas. And so that's another way that, as far as adding value to your audience, helping people engage with your podcast, having things within your show notes that just make sense as a call to action or a value add, can be incredibly beneficial for growing your email subscribers and getting more leads into your business.
Yeah. For anyone who is like, I want to know more about this marketing magic. Tell me more. Where can people kind of learn more, and where do people kind of start typically when they join?
Yeah, so you can get a 7-day free trial if you go to marketingmagic.app/lifetime. It just gives you all the information about it and you can get set up with a trial. It takes less than 60 seconds to get started. So if you've got a web page, a website, you can just add the URL and it'll set your account up for you. And then the idea behind Marketing Magic is that it helps with the product marketing and product management for small businesses. So it's helping you with things at a brand level, which like, how do you communicate with your ideal audience? How do you position yourself as a brand? What are some of the customer journey, customer research, customer jobs to be done tools that can be helpful as you are communicating your message as a brand? Tools to help with different website pages. So homepage, about page, landing page, contact page, all of those things with the structure that helps you optimize for organic visibility as well. There's also like a speaking page and a podcast page as well. There's like quite a few different templates. So that's at a brand level. And then at a product level, you can add in the things that you're selling. So whether it's a service or, you know, a membership or a course or a program or a physical product, you can add the product details in. And then depending on the product type, it'll generate a custom to-do list that walks you through creating your core product assets, your sales assets, and then the marketing assets to bring traffic over to that product and to the sales pages for that product. So the idea is that it's helping you build out a really strategic marketing ecosystem around what your brand does and what your products are that are going to help you to bring people through to your business via a lot of evergreen sort of marketing messaging. And so it does things like creates sales pages, emails, etc. But it also helps with ideation, and the tone of voice on it is absolutely amazing because it's been one of my niche focuses for the last 18 months is that how do we make sure that AI sounds like us as creators and as solo business owners, instead of it focusing on sounding more corporate or more like enterprise kind of brand voice. And so yeah, the transcript repurposing kind of comes into it, but the idea is that it's a holistic tool for small business owners that has been built by small business owners and that can help with a variety of different content marketing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing all of this information. I feel like if there's one thing that we could take away from this conversation, for me, it's focus your efforts where they should be, right? Don't let this idea of, oh, I have to create consistent content stop you from making sales, from getting in front of the right people who are going to be paying you cash money dollars. And you can still be creating content as you're talking to those people, and it doesn't have to feel hard. What is one thing that you feel that people should be taking away definitely from this conversation?
Done is better than perfect. And if you are creating content and take a sabbatical, you can still be using that content across your marketing really confidently and signposting people over to your podcast. But you can also still keep an eye on your metrics because you'll still be getting traffic to your business and visibility, and because that content is evergreen. So just, yeah, keep at it.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so happy that you were here and able to share this because I'm over here. You guys didn't see me. If you were watching, you did see me. But if you're listening, you didn't. I'm over here nodding my head constantly throughout the whole conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.